This is a useful strategy to try if you're finding that Twitter has been making you feel bad. When I would delete these tweets that I had finished writing but hadn't posted, I'd be like, that feeling of relief. And the best part of it is that they can't not like your tweet if you didn't tweet it. Twitter is full of bad people, and using it makes you a bad person too. Or does it? We're gonna be talking about all that and more, but first, coffee. Let's get the beans out. Today's beans are actually Mandarin Tanobatak. We've used this on the series before. Look at that. You can smell the beans from here. Let's put this Mandarin into the, or it's not actually Mandarin, as in like Chinese Mandarin. I think it's Mandiling. Mandiling from like Indonesia. I think that's probably where it actually comes from. So what this video is actually about is the fact that I, for a little while, stopped using Twitter. Not because Twitter itself is a bad place, which it is, just kidding, it's actually not too bad. Twitter was having a massively negative impact on my life, and it got to the point that I wasn't really able to move forward without ridding myself of Twitter. Let's grind! And I'll go back to the start. It comes from a number of times over the past year or two, as I've been moving in between communities and within communities, old followers leave and new followers come in. You're often attracting, especially if you run a YouTube channel, like attention from different places. And even if you don't run a YouTube channel, you get attention from all sorts of different places. You can be pretty big on social media without being a YouTube channel person. You could just post interesting stuff all the time and people may never see your face, but you can still be a pretty big personality on Twitter. But one of the easiest things to do on Twitter is to put your opinion out there, no matter whether it's correct, incorrect, a hot take, a cold take. It's just something that feels natural to do now. Anytime anything happens, something fun that happens, or you've got a reaction to something, you want to put a tweet out because the Twitter is the fastest way to do it and doesn't require any video editing, any real heavy uploading. You can basically write 3 or 4 sentences and put it straight up on the internet. People need gratification. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Gratification is a really important mechanism that we use to keep ourselves motivated to continue doing our tasks and reach our goals. And so Twitter is an important tool that we use to get gratification to help us move forward in our lives and our goals and our things that we're trying to do. And that's what I would also do. So I was part of the Twitter thing, and anytime anything happened, I would put my opinion out on the internet. I'd be like, oh, I don't like this, or oh, I love this, or this looks cool. Especially, you know, a topic that you're not even part of, but you think you have something to add to, and you'll chime in on the discussion. You'll be like, well, actually, if we think about it this way, you think you're adding to the conversation, but really, like, you were never part of that conversation before. It's just a conversation happening out in public. It's the equivalent of walking past 2 people saying something interesting, and then, like, jutting in and going, well, actually, I think you'll find. It was just like, whoa! Who are you? And I would be part of that as well. I think pretty much everyone has experienced a little bit of this on Twitter. And another thing that I used to do was be very negative, especially about things that I dislike about living in Japan. Everyone has things that they dislike about living in their country and things that have always bothered them. But I would do it all the time, and I would just dig myself into this hole where I'd become less and less satisfied about the place that I was living in. And it ended up that it was because I had Twitter. I had this outlet to go to every time something bothered me, and what was actually happening is I wasn't releasing stress. I was kind of building up a history of stress. Like a readable, you can go to the website and you can see the thread, the 10 posts or 20 posts or 100 posts over the course of a month of just built up anger towards things that I disliked, or just situations that I was in that I couldn't escape from, things that were frustrating me. And you're not just writing tweets, but you're also reading them as well. So I would often read other people's tweets, and I would recognize that other people were jutting into other people's conversations, putting out a cold take that wasn't really hitting the mark, all of these things. It's exactly the same stuff that I was doing, but I wasn't aware. It was not that I wasn't aware, I just wasn't especially conscious that I was doing it as well. And I started looking back at my own tweets. I was like, what am I saying? And the reason that I noticed that all this stuff, it wasn't just like magic and I discovered, oh wow, I need to change the way I use Twitter. It was that I started to feel bad. Every time I would go on Twitter, I'd be having a fun time, and then I'd write my tweet. I'd be like, yeah, this is gonna go down so well. People are gonna like this. Over the next 10 minutes, I'd be like checking, and it was like, oh, I've only got like 5 likes, but usually I'd have 10 likes by now. And then, you know, an hour later, I'm like, oh god, and the likes are just not going up. Or in fact, someone's just replied and they disagree, and they said that, oh, actually, maybe if I'd looked into something else, I'd realize that this was actually the case. And I was like, man, I wish I hadn't said anything. And that's essentially how I constantly felt about Twitter. And that discounts all the times that I've opened my mouth, and it's been fine. And we've had a good discussion. It's those moments where I provided my input and it was unwanted, sometimes misinformed, sometimes just straight up wrong. And it was making me feel really terrible about myself. I thought I was taking part in this place where it's open and we can have discussions, and if you're wrong, you just say, sorry, I didn't understand. But actually, I was being made to feel like if you put a tweet out there, that's like your full-on statement about the topic, and people are gonna quote you for the rest of your life because you said this thing, which you just happened to kind of be feeling that way at the time. And so what I'm trying to say is that Twitter has a way of turning your transient feelings into everlasting issues that just follow you around forever. Whether people bring it up or not, it follows you around just in the back of your mind. Alright, let's go and grab the hot water. So my initial way of dealing with this Twitter issue of mine was to just not tweet at all. I was like, if I don't have anything positive to say, I won't say anything at all. And of course I realized that that system's not really gonna work out for me because I'm not the type that can kind of bottle it up. If there's something on my mind, I kind of want to say it. But I did try to only say positive things. I just felt like I wasn't being true to myself. I was using the platform to voice my opinions and feelings, you know, when I felt them, but I felt like I was being trapped, like I wasn't allowed to use the platform the way that I wanted to be using it. It's like, I think there has to be a better way to do this, because I kept finding various tweets and posts and videos and things that I wanted to share with the world, but things that weren't actually funny, weren't actually part of the channel, weren't related to games, weren't related to Japan, weren't related to any of the, you know, drawing, all the things that I do. And I started to feel like, oh man, I need to share it with someone. And so instead of sharing it on Twitter, I would end up sending it to my family. I'm one of those people that has a WhatsApp group for my family, and I would send them these videos that they didn't want to see, and I would still feel the exact same way as I was feeling with Twitter. I was like, oh, looks like my brother replied and my sister replied, but then, oh, my mom didn't seem like to think that that was particularly funny, or my dad, you know, he said something like, oh, maybe this sort of thing's actually not that funny. And I'm like, oh, you know, now I feel bad again. And I realized I was just recreating the exact same thing that I had been doing with Twitter, and that's when it hit me. Well, actually, before it hit me, I had a second option. Instead of sharing it with my family group, I started sharing it with individual people. I thought, well, maybe I could make someone feel, or let them know, that I think that they would find this interesting. This post was funny, and it made me think of you. And so I do have a few friends who really appreciate that and are quite receptive to that way of thinking. Like, oh, they shared this with me because they think that this is something that we both have in common that we thought would be funny, and he's shared it with me. But even after a while, that started to get kind of, I could just feel like it was quite tiresome. It's like, can you please stop sending me these tweets and these things that you think are funny? It's like, I really don't need them. And that's when I realized I have the ultimate feature already built into my phone, and it's the share button. Instead of retweeting something, you can share it to yourself. And this is what completely changed my life. I would find silly videos of, you know, cats jumping onto a desk and not quite making the mark, or like 800 dogs appearing out of a barn or something funny. I'm a compulsive sharer. And that's kind of bothersome to people who aren't interested. When you have a channel, people can just tune in whenever they want. If they find interesting what you find interesting, they can watch your videos, and it all works great. But when you're on Twitter, it's like it shows up in the feed, it's like, ugh, I follow you because I'm looking for content on Japan, or content on gaming, or whatever. I wasn't looking for this, and I discovered that if you share it to yourself, to the memo pad, it's the perfect way to get all the joy of sharing without harassing everyone with this thing that they don't really want to see. Alright, time to try some of this Mandarin Tanobatak, which I've had before, but as always, I've completely forgotten. Apart from maybe India, the India APAA that I keep drinking, I can't remember really the flavor of any coffee. It's just like an experience that overwhelms me and then I completely forget until the next time I drink it. It's like a table made entirely of porcelain. So let me explain how I've been trying this system. I'll be on Twitter and I'll be reading stuff and I'll see something that someone said and it'll kind of spark me off with my own opinion, right? And so I won't join their thread, but I'll make my own tweet. I guess that counts as subtweeting, but I'm not really trying to like call anyone out. Stuff just inspires me and I'm like, okay, well, I've got something that I want to say about the internet and I'm going to tweet it. And I'll sometimes get to this halfway point where I've written halfway point or the full way through the tweet and I'll go, you know what? The world doesn't need to know this. In fact, the world doesn't want to know this. I'm just gonna delete it. And I'll just hold down delete and I'll erase the whole tweet. So that's when I've got something I wanted to say and I just decide to get rid of it entirely. And it's actually the act of deleting that tweet that gives me all the satisfaction. And I'm absolutely serious. I get 100% of the satisfaction and none of the anxiety from sending the actual tweet. Because if you say what it is you want to say, you put yourself out on the line, I guess, I don't know what the phrase is. You put yourself out there to be rejected. But when you have an opinion, which essentially no one needed to know anyway, and who knows, it may have helped someone if you had tweeted it, but basically, I'm just saying that this is a useful strategy to try if you're finding that Twitter has been making you feel bad. When I would delete these tweets that I had finished writing but hadn't posted, if I would click delete all the way until it finished delete and then went back to my timeline, I'd be like, that feeling of relief. That was a close shave. I'm glad I didn't put that out there. That would have been dumb. And it feels really, really good. And the best part of it is that they can't not like your tweet if you didn't tweet it. The second way that I would be using Twitter, or the second way I've been using Twitter predominantly for the past 6 months, maybe 8 months now, is that when I see something hilariously funny, or I see something that bothers me, or I see something that I agree with and I want the whole world to know, I'll just not click the retweet button. There are times when it's relevant to especially gaming in Japan that I will click retweet and sometimes add a comment and say, this person has felt exactly how I felt, I want you all to know so I don't have to write the tweet out. This is basically how I feel. I will click the retweet button, but 96% of the time, I'll click the little square with an arrow pointing out of it, and that gives you options on your phone to send to your memo pad. I don't know if maybe you can do it with Google as well, you can use like Google Keep, but I've been using the Apple memo pad, and that's just a memo pad on my phone, and I can go through that list of funny stuff. And the best part of it is that now that I have that list of funny cat tweets. Basically, it's just almost always a tweet of a video of some cat attempting to do this funny thing but not quite making it, and I just find that hilarious. I'll be in conversation with family members. I'll be like, oh my goodness, you know, it's funny that you said that because I saw something just the other day, and I just go through my phone and it's all registered in my Apple Notes. You can search for it by text. So when I click share and send it to my memo pad, I'll write a little text information thing like, cat tries to jump over table but doesn't make it. And then I can just search for it on my phone using the search feature. You can just type the words, cat doesn't jump, or something like that. And eventually I'll just find all of those tweets that I had put into my memo pad. And when I show like a video on my phone like this, and it's only 30 seconds to a person, then we can talk about it, and then the person I'm talking to, whether it's a family member or a friend, they can just look back at me and go, oh, I've already seen that video, and then I don't need to show them the rest of it. Or they can say, oh, that's hilarious, oh my goodness, can you send that to me? I'm gonna send it to my friend right now. Or they can go, what's wrong with you? That's not funny. And I get that immediate feedback. And I can go, you're actually right. It's not that funny. You know what? I'm just going to delete it off my phone right now. You can deal with the situation at the time and place that it's like being shared. And you can also get their visual cues and their audio cues, and you can work through these situations. And that's not something that's easy to do on Twitter. If you had retweeted it, if you'd retweeted it with a comment, if you'd copied the video and reposted it yourself. There are so many ways that you can receive backlash on the internet for your opinion, and it's just not worth it. It gets to the point that you just don't want to tweet anymore, and that would be a shame, because actually, as a platform, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. It's a way of you to meet other people who are like-minded. It's a way for you to put out sometimes inspirational quotes that helped you, and then they turn out to end up helping other people. There's a lot of power and greatness and goodness that can come from stuff like Twitter, but it has a funny way of making us feel terrible all the time. The internet has a way of making us feel terrible all the time. And it's not really their fault, because they don't know that everyone else wants to make you feel awful as well. And so sometimes you'll get fewer likes than you expected. You'll get some subtweeting from other people. They'll like passively tweet about what you said, but they won't say your name, and they'll say, I can't believe that's... Some people think this way and they're clearly talking about you. Or they can reply directly to the tweet and say, what is wrong with you? That's terrible. Or they can say something that you're not even sure if it's nice or not, but then you mute them anyway, and then you kind of feel bad for muting them, or you feel bad for blocking them. There's so many complications that make it difficult to work through those, let's say, sticky situations. It's so difficult to work through these like thorny issues that would be so much easier to do in person, but Twitter is not a platform where you work things out in person. And until it is, and it probably won't be because that's not the point of the platform, this is one really great way to bring the conversation offline. Put it in your memo pad, and then you're more likely to bring it up in person with actual human people, where you can work through your feelings. Agree, you can disagree, and then even if you do disagree, you can work out what was wrong or what was right and how to go about these things in the future. I guess the takeaway from this story is to take the conversation offline sometimes, because often that's the better place to have these conversations. And it's also one of the best ways that you can get the most out of the internet without having to suffer the wrath of the internet. It's so satisfying when I've been like sat down at Christmas with my family talking about things that I saw on Twitter, and then having a conversation where family members are actually interested, and they're like, that's so interesting that that's happening in the gaming world. I had no idea that it had got to that point. And then we would go into deeper conversations, and they could start sharing stuff with me that has nothing to do with Japan or gaming or drawing, but actually has parallels because some people are being treated the same way but in other communities. And it's like, oh wow, this is a really fascinating conversation, which could have gone completely the wrong way if it had only happened on the internet. And it's just really cool to be able to take something from the internet and be able to enrich our day-to-day in IRL, in real life. Anyway, just wanted to quickly talk to you about that because it's been on my mind for literally the past 6 to 8 months, but I've been very slowly coming to put my thoughts together. It's been kind of difficult. When you have an idea, it doesn't have to be a tweet. And this is especially pertinent to people who want to be content creators or YouTubers or people who do podcasts. Places where you can make long-lasting content which actually is your opinion and statement on the idea, which is exactly what's happening right now. This has become a coffee video, but it could have just been a long series of tweets that would have been on the internet and then flushed through the threads of the internet and forgotten. But instead of tweeting it, I've been able to make a slow cup of coffee and talk about it slowly, think about it slowly, and then afterwards I'll be able to edit out all the things that I actually probably don't agree with. Often I say a lot of things that are just transient thoughts that I haven't actually given enough thought to, but because this is a video, I can edit it down to exactly what I'm actually thinking. Or as close to what I am actually thinking. Or as close to what I think I'm actually thinking. You know what I mean? But especially if you're a content creator, it's very easy to fall into the trap that you need to put your reactions out there, that you need to put your opinions out there as soon as possible because everyone else is racing to do the same thing and they're trying to get those likes as fast as possible. Maybe that's not the reason they're doing it. Maybe people just are excited about something and they want to get their opinions out there as fast as possible. But every time you put out a tweet, which is like your opinion on something or your reaction to something, you miss out on a really big opportunity to make longer form content, like the stuff that you can put on YouTube. And it's potentially a more true version of what you actually think, because it's not right there when you thought it. Sometimes all you need is to make a cup of coffee nice and slowly. Unfortunately, in my case, even if I make a slow cup of coffee, sometimes I still don't get to the point and I still don't really know how I feel about it. That's all for now. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, share links and all that great stuff, and I'll see you in the next NihongoGamer video and or stream. Check us out on the Discord where you can chat about coffee, gear, gaming, Japan, drawing, whatever it is you're interested in. See you next time.